Do me a favor. Tell us what it is to be a comedian, right? Because as you know, I'm born and raised here in LA, and the thing out here is everybody's an actor, right? So I would talk to somebody growing up and be like, "Oh, what do you do?" And they're like, "I'm an actor." I'm like, "Oh, what have you been in?" Well, I've got an agent, and I'm like, "Oh, what have you been booked on?" And they're like, "Well, I took some headshots," and I'm like, "Oh, so basically you had a photo shoot, and now you're calling yourself an actor." If somebody calls themselves a comedian, or a professional comedian, what does that even mean? Like, what do? Do you guys have a union? Do you guys have to sign a card? Do you have to change your status on Facebook? Like, what does it mean to be a comedian?
So, it's a thing like actor or musician or, podcaster. You are because you say you are, it's there's every varying degree of that. Like Joe Rogan can very easily say he's a podcaster the same way he can say he's a comedian, the same way he can say that he's like a jujitsu badass because he does that shit. Like, you can just go and do comedy once and tell everybody you're a comedian. I tell people, so I say that I've been doing comedy, and it's hard to count because of the fucking pandemic, but I started taking comedy really seriously in May of 2018. And I felt embarrassed that I'd called myself a comedian before that because I'd done like 6 open mics. I was writing shit all the time in my little journal. And I have an Evernote that dates back to like 2016, 2015, before I did comedy for the first time. And I have like a bunch of notes there, but I don't think it was genuine to call myself a comedian before I really started going to mics and trying to get on shows. And a good metric for how far along someone is in their career talent wise is what kind of shows they're doing, how long of time they're performing. That's one kind of thing that people don't realize is that, when you see that comedian do 30 minutes on stage or an hour long thing on stage, that takes a long time to build up a polished hour. Like if it's a good hour long thing, that's taken, probably years for them to go and workshop all the jokes and cut all of the fat and get rid of all the unnecessary details and riff off of things and expect what's going to happen in the crowd to riff off of that. Like that takes a long time. So for me, I'm at a stage where I've been doing it, 2.5, almost 3 years, actively. And I have probably 30 minutes of jokes, but they don't all go in a row. Like if I had to go do 30 minutes, I would have to stretch it out. There'd be some fat in there, just being perfectly honest. But if I'm doing 10 minutes, I can crush that because I've got a great couple of 10 minutes, So that's where I'm at in my career. I get paid gigs to go and do that 10 minutes on showcases. One of the other things that I get paid for that really helped me was hosting. It's a lot of people see it as a different skill than comedy because you do have to still do stand-up comedy when you're hosting, but you also have to control the energy of the room in between other comedians. You got to get the atmosphere started and make it, you can't go up there and completely destroy with crazy zany shit and just be wild and out of control. You got to go up there with big energy and get some good laughs, but you got to warm people up and let them know they can laugh at some fucked up shit, but you don't take them all the way there right at the beginning. I would never do a pedophile joke to open up a show as a host, but I might do that if I was, doing a 15-minute headliner spot. I might put that in the middle because it's fun to do crazy jokes and see what you can get people to laugh at. But so that's where being a comedian is just going and doing comedy, whether you're professional or not. Just means, do you get money to perform? And right now it's such a weird time because there's so few gigs that hardly anybody is making a living off of live stand-up comedy right now.
Yeah, that's something that I had to understand, when you moved out here to LA and we became such closer friends and I went to a bunch of your gigs. In my mind, stand-up is Dave Chappelle, Seinfeld, Tom Segura doing a super polished hour in front of a crowd of 10,000 people. And the reason, because this isn't my genre, right? It makes sense. In my mind, it's that's what comedy is. You do an hour, you either kill it or you suck, and people, but then when I started watching you, it's we drive all the way across town to see you do 3 minutes at a gig. And I was like, wait, what? He got up there and did 2 jokes. I hear more of that around the office, when Mike stops by for lunch, but you're right. It's any other skill set. Michael Jordan didn't just all of a sudden show up at the NBA. There was a lot of time behind the scenes working on stuff, writing in his journal, taking free throw shots. And so, is it normal for a new comedian or somebody that's trying to get that open mic to what's the hustle? Are they once a night, twice a night? Are they getting 2 minutes? Are they writing 10 hours a day for jokes? I can't even conceptualize what that day looks like or how that work starts. Can you kind of walk us through, like, what does it mean to be new and get 3 minutes on stage?
Well, so like, I mean, there's a lot of varying degrees of it, and there's no one right way to do it. You know, there's some people that don't do a shit ton of mics and don't develop a bunch of material, but are very friendly and run good shows and, have that way of doing comedy. Like, there's some people that write prolifically and perform prolifically. Like, and it's also hard to answer that too, because things are very, very, very different now. Like, comedy is one of the things that was, just wiped out by the pandemic. Like, when you think about the things that are shut, bars and restaurants, in-person gatherings of people, anything indoors, like, these are all the things that you need for comedy. Like, most comedy doesn't happen at comedy clubs. It happens at things that aren't comedy clubs. Like, until you are a big name person, you're not really performing at comedy clubs. That's a rite of passage that you have to earn. So like, if you're, only a year or 2 or 3, 5 years in, I mean, depending on, how good you are, like, you're still doing a lot of bar shows, and like, those are gone.